While the dust is finally settling from the wild day of the first free agency day, we are going to discuss what happened for Utah. Did they avoid some of the chaos, but still getting what they needed? We'll talk about that on this episode of Locked On Utah Hockey Club.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your number one daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club. I am your host, Robyn Leonio, alongside Tom Callahan. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every single day. We are free and available everywhere you get your shows. We're continuing a very long string of consecutive episodes, Tom, I think, in terms of actually daily. We rarely do weekends. We did a couple of weekends this time, and now it's we're just putting this stuff along, getting you guys all the best content we can, because you know what? We had a wild last week, and Monday was no exception.
Well, that's part of the beauty of it, isn't it? Is that there's stuff to talk about. It's been so busy. It's been a fun couple of weeks leading up to the draft. Obviously, the Stanley Cup Final, and then leading up to the draft and the movement for Utah Hockey Club, and now day one of free agency. Even though it's not 100% over, the next couple of days, there's going to be deals trickling in. Most of the fireworks have gone off by the first few hours on July 1, and we've seen some big time player movement. And then Utah, we've seen what Utah does. So we're going to talk about that here in the show as well. But you know what? I mean, this has been a fun time of year. And I know the rest of the hockey world is going to try to exhale and breathe a little bit. And we're just going to keep on trucking.
Let's go ahead and kick things off by talking about what Utah did. And later on, we'll kind of discuss what the rest of the chaos and why I think that was probably a good thing that Utah was able to avoid some of that. And get some other things. We're gonna talking about opening day getting revealed. Maybe we got an entry level contract signed. Well, so we're gonna get into all of that, Tom. But let's start talking about what the signings that they did make. And I start off with the one that they did that was announced almost right off the bat. It happened fairly quickly after the opening of the market on Monday, and we had Ian Cole signing a 1-year deal with the Utah Hockey Club.
So the two names that we're going to talk about here, and we'll start with Ian Cole, were both kind of out there as being tied to Utah before today, and it comes to fruition. Cole is a 35-plus contract at $3.1 million. It's a 1-year deal. Gives this team, number one, Stanley Cup experience. He won a pair of Stanley Cups, so that's tremendous right there. That is not something you can replicate. Even players who go to the final and lose, what does it take to get over the hump? Ian Cole knows that, and he can impart that in the dressing room. The other thing I think that this does is it gives them that solid back-end veteran presence. Cole's not lighting it up, rushing it up the ice. He's not that guy, but he is steady. He is going to watch, his defensive zone well. And I think that is super, super important in front of, and I still call them young goaltenders. Then again, to me, everybody's young. But I still, the young goaltenders that Utah Hockey Club has, to have a veteran in front of them, that's going to help steady them. It helps steady the decor. And I think really automatically gives them extra leadership in the room, which is fantastic.
It really does give them extra leadership. We're talking about these players, both Cole and Stenlund, on getting that veteran presence. Not just veteran presence, we're talking playoff veteran presence. We're adding players with playoff experience. I want to throw a stat to you, Tom, that I saw from a fellow listener and follower of the podcast. Put out did a little bit of math for us, so I didn't have to do it, so he did it for us. On the recent acquisitions for Utah in playoff presence versus with the players that they've already had on the roster. So currently, from the players that were under contract before the weekend, so we're going to not even include the trades that happened over the weekend. To before the weekend, all the players combined on the Utah Hockey Club had a combined 119 career playoff games. You add after adding Marino, Stenlund, Cole, and Sergachev, they are adding an additional 289 playoff games.
That's huge. Absolutely huge. And you add Stanley Cups. So that again, I mean, we talk about that. That is the important thing. Even, and we can get to Stenlund here in a minute, a guy who played 24 games in that run for the Florida Panthers. And even though was not a major contributor a la Sam Reinhart, I mean, obviously we know who Sam Reinhart is, but if you're in the lineup every day, you have an important role on that team. And it takes a village to win a cup. And so knowing that whether you're contributing on the first line or the fourth line, the top pair or the 5-6 pair, even if you're the backup goaltender, I mean, we saw for Florida, hey, sometimes they needed the backup goaltender. Like everybody has a role to play. And I think that learning that for the Utah Hockey Club for the players who haven't gone through it is massive.
It really is. And I think it really says something too on the trajectory that this team wants to be in terms of, as we've mentioned, what the last few days, the everydayers know exactly what we're talking about, that this team wants to compete. They want to kind of be at that range, at that spot now of, yeah, we're going to be ready to be right there for a playoff spot.
Yeah. And you know what? You look at it from a standpoint of where Utah is, they're improved. A lot of other teams got better today in the West. And I tweeted this earlier at Callahan on air, if you want to give me a follow over there, right after you like this podcast and follow it, by the way. But, you know, everybody got, well, not everybody, many teams got a little bit better. And looking at Nashville improved, Vancouver improved, you know, like even, I'm not saying that Chicago is going to push up from the bottom, but they were active. You know, they're moving.
They were.
Dallas is rearranging. The Avalanche actually were kind of quiet, and they don't need to do a whole lot. So I can understand them standing pat for the most part. But a lot of these teams were pushing to improve today. Edmonton is a team that you know they're going to change. You know, they lose a Warren Fogle to LA. Speaking of which, LA, another team that was making some moves today. I mean, a lot of teams tried to improve and make themselves better because they know that Edmonton's going to come back just a little bit, and that they also know they can be there for the push. And getting into the playoffs in the West is going to be the most important thing. And honestly, I don't think next year's seeding is going to matter worth much at all in the West in the playoffs. Everybody's going to be competitive. The West got so much better this
The West
week.
is going to be absolutely dangerous. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss more of what we saw over free agency. Maybe talk about maybe the good things of what Utah was able to avoid of something that really happened on Monday, and get to a few other things. Opening day, entry-level contracts. We got a lot to talk about. We'll do that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have wound down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up bets at any time I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. There is something for everyone every day, all summer long. Maybe you are a soccer fan and you're betting on the Euro Cup or Copa America. Maybe you're a baseball fan and you want to bet on who's going to win the NL or AL West. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockdown and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official betting's partner of Major League Baseball. One of the things I want to talk about now, Tom, when it comes to this free agency period, and I saw a graphic about it in terms of how much money was thrown around on Monday. It was insane at the term, which by the way, I want to address this. I saw when finally seeing what the exact term and contract value was for Brandon Montour, made me think, okay, yeah, Utah probably wasn't going to go all in because too much. I don't think they were going to go long term. You know, they want to make sure that they had money 2-3 years down the road to go to pay Dylan Gunther, Josh Stone, Logan Cooley, and some of the other big name guys are going to be, and they're going to finish up their ELCs 2-3 years down the road. So it made sense that they didn't want to go for longer term. They did want to keep things simple and at a safer team-friendly value here.
Yeah, and Seattle's a team I didn't mention last segment that also improved in the West. They got Montour. But I will say this, Utah did a lot to improve.
Yes.
And
Oh,
so
100%.
yeah, and so now knowing that you're still double-digit free cap space, it allows you to do a couple of things. You have flexibility now to make moves if you need to, in and around the deadline. You have, and who knows what this team's going to be? We will see coming up this year. But if they're in a position where they're sitting in a 5 or 6 and they feel like they're one player away, they have the room to go for it. And it could be a short term, could be a rental, could be something like that. They have the room. So that's there in the short term. But then, as you point out, in the long term, also knowing you're managing that cap space, you got to figure, when you're in that 11 to 15 window, 3 years from now, that window is probably 15 to 20 million with the cap going up. Just by it growing, that's the space it'll turn into. So
Right.
with an eye on managing that towards the future, knowing you're going to have to pay some guys and you're still going to make some decisions about who you keep and who you don't. I think that right now the management of the dollars and cents is good. They didn't put themselves right up against the cap. I mean, look at Nashville today. Nashville went nuts. And they loaded up because they feel they're in their window now. They just locked up their goaltender for 8 years. Now they've essentially, I know some of the, like Stamkos has a 4-year deal. That's really a 2-year window for Nashville. It's this year, next year. They signed some aging but really important guys. Marchessault's another one. They bring in Brady Shea. Like, they really went after it. So they're win now mode, and that's Utah is not win now mode. They're win soon mode, I think, now. Whereas, not that they don't want to win this year. Please don't get me wrong. Please don't flame me, Utah fans. Yes, they want to win. Duh. They want to win. I get that. But they're win soon mode because they need to grow to that, and they're not quite there yet.
You're absolutely right. And with that 15 million, you're right about giving them flexibility. And I want to add this one more thing. Let's remember this. Barrett Hayton still needs to come in terms with a contract.
Right.
He was given his qualified offer. Who knows if he takes qualified offer? Who knows if he takes the arbitration? Or if Utah just decided that we'll just give you QO until we find out a better deal for you because we just want to keep the discussion open. Whatever it might be, Barrett Hayton is due for a raise. I have almost no doubt about that. He's going to be, he's going to get a pretty fair contract for what he's worth. He's improved significantly over the last few years. So you have to factor that in as well.
Well, yeah, you do. And I mean, this isn't as simple as knowing exactly what direction this is all going to go tomorrow. There is a lot of questions for not only this year, but next year and the year after. Also, we don't know who the surprise is. And there are every year surprises of training camp. Some guy might come in as a free agent. Some guy might come in as a draft pick and impress and wow and earn a spot. It happens. And you allow for that to happen as well. So to have that bit of flexibility is good. I think that I look at what the signings today did in terms of depth and in terms of security, one up front, one in the back. Great. I really like where they've positioned themselves at this point. So there's nothing really to fear. If you're a Utah fan, there is a lot to be excited about, but also know that the level of competition also got better around you. And so it's interesting to see how GMs are trying to squeeze every last penny out of that salary cap rag as they wring it tighter and tighter and tighter. Eventually, teams have to pay the piper, though, right? We saw the Blackhawks have to pay that price. We saw Tampa Bay paying that price now, and other teams have had to offload and pay that price after they've won their cups or after they made their runs, but not won their cups. Florida is now paying its price by losing a couple of guys. So you have to make decisions.
Vegas is losing a decent.
Vegas. Yeah, great point. Vegas. So, but Utah's in the position to reap the rewards, and they have been. And so that's going to continue into the future as well.
You're seeing a lot of teams that are reaping the rewards out of that and, slowly adding the veterans, right? That are going to help teach the young guys. Utah is one of them. even lower down the totem pole. I noticed it in terms of a pretty decent signing for what they needed. In the San Jose Sharks, when they cited Tyler Toffoli, I'm like, all right, they need a guy like Tyler Toffoli to help guide through them. They got a guy with playoff experience that's hopefully gonna, coach up a guy like Macklin Celebrini or bring up whatever you might need.
And there's some other teams I think that, quite honestly, we're scratching our heads at a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into that because that's not what this is about. This is about Utah. But I do want to point out to the fans listening to this that even though there can be some criticism levied against anything, in my opinion, if you want to find a reason to nitpick, you will, right?
Right.
I believe that the signings were made with caution, patience, and good foresight. So to me, in a management team, it is not only about today, unless if you're Edmonton, it is absolutely about today. Okay. That's a different scenario. But if you're where Utah is, it's not just about today, it's about tomorrow. And so that to me gives me a much better feeling about the management of this. And I don't feel bad at all for not reeling in Brandon Montour. I mean, look, if it happened, fantastic, but it didn't. And that's okay.
If it happened, look, I was dreaming up those line pairings, and I'm like, okay, that's going to be a monster line pairing. And then I adjusted it. I just posted it right before we recorded this podcast. It's like, all right, here's some updated projected line pairings. Again, it's due to change. I can maybe move, like Cole or Valimaki as an example. But as of right now, I just kind of threw this together at the top of my mind. You have Sergachev and Dursey now on that top pairing. Cole and Marino down in 2, and Valimaki and Kesselring still keep that third pairing. I like Valimaki and Kesselring together. That's why I've done that. And I just shuffled one in first and second pair.
Yeah. And I mean, it could be a mix and match as we get into camp. But again, there's no accounting for chemistry too. You accidentally plop 2 guys on a line and all of a sudden they look dynamite together. Okay. You're going to keep that, right? So, that's the fun. You put them in a blender, hit frappe, see what you come out with, because this is a total reworking of the defense. It's not a total reworking of the forwards. You kind of have, I'd say, mostly known commodities there, but there can be some shuffle here because you can introduce new players into the mix. What happens if, Krause catches fire with somebody that, he's never played with before? It could happen. So I think that's going to be the fun of training camp, is watching these guys. I mean, September 22nd is the first preseason game, and it's rare. Robin, I've been around this game a long time. I've 25 years.
Right.
I've never been excited about preseason. Never. I'm just not. It doesn't do anything for me. But this year for Utah, I'm kind of excited about preseason.
If we're talking about a new team, new city, and it's really going to give us a look at a preview of what we might see in the upcoming year. I say preview because, again, it's preseason it has, for a lot of teams, means little. For a lot of
and the other thing too, the impact of the draft picks, you can't undersell. No, not everybody's making the team, but man, it's going to be cool to see Iginla make that debut, isn't it?
By the way, did you see what number Tisha Iginla is wearing at prospect camp?
I did. I saw the video of him taking his first wheel out there, and you know what? It's really funny. It's so familiar that I never even thought about it. Never even thought about it. Because I'm just like, oh yeah, that's an Iginla. That makes sense.
He's wearing his dad's number 12. By the way, if he actually makes the roster, chance of him actually wearing number 12 probably pretty low. He'll probably get 24, maybe double that or whatever. I think that was what his number was in junior. Something.
Is anybody 21? You could always flip the 12 around. Some guys do that.
True. I have to take a look back at the roster again and see, but that certainly is a possibility. So we'll have to see what it is. I mean, it's just adds some extra excitement. Would love to see what Iginla looks like come training camp and preseason.
It does. It adds a lot of fun. It just it gives you that tingle.
But also for the actual season to start, because we actually know a day for the actual season to begin. We're going to talk about that as well as a entry-level contract signing. We'll get to that right after this. All right, Tom. The schedule is supposed to be Tuesday. So today, when most of the people y'all listening is going to be released today,
Right.
the full schedule. But we know now at least every single team's home opener, and now we know that October 8th is the day the Utah Hockey Club will be hosting their first true regular season game against the Chicago Blackhawks at the
How
Dome.
exciting. How exciting, especially if Iginla, for whatever reason, does make the opening night roster. And again, I feel the chances are strong he'll be there at least the first couple of games so they can get a look at him. But Connor Bedard, rookie of the year, coming into the building, a retooled Blackhawks, who I think, looking at their July 1 pickups, made themselves better.
Yeah.
Got a little bit more difficult to play against and a little deeper. They are a team with some recent cachet because they've won 3 Stanley Cups in the last, I think we're going back 14 years now. 2010 was the first one.
God.
So this is a team that has some power and some name recognition, and coming in to face Utah in the first game, the home opener October 8th. And not only is it the home opener, Robyn, it is NHL opening night. So the spotlight is going to be on the Delta Center across the league. There are only 3 games on that October 8th date. Utah is one of them.
They are one of them. And again, and I think it's marketing that correctly, right? Because we're talking about a completely new team opening up. Not, I guess, you can't really say completely new team because it still is remnant of what the Arizona Coyotes was, but improved in many ways because they've actually added the players, Utah's added the players that they did in the last few days, as well as what they're going to see, and come this training camp with new players coming in. For example, in prospect camp, who knows if they'll be able to at least come on over still. But Simashev and Boot are in prospect camp this week. I didn't even think that was going to happen yet. So we're getting closer.
It's kind of funny. I knew, obviously on the calendar, prospect camp starts today, or tomorrow or yesterday as you're hearing this. Man, that snuck up on me. I'll be honest with you. It absolutely, because I was so wrapped up in the tornado that is free agency. It just kind of snuck up on me. I'm not going to lie. A little bit of a surprise.
By the way, for those that are interested in knowing about the prospect camp, I believe there is a public scrimmage at the Park City Arena on the 5th, this Friday. So be able to make it. Go for it. Make it.
I think that'd be a lot of fun to see. That would be fantastic. I don't know why you wouldn't. So that's pretty exciting.
Oh, I'm sure it will be a packed venue for sure. Again, first glimpse to see some of the future of the Utah Hockey Club. Why not take that opportunity? Speaking of future of the hockey club, Tom, we have an entry-level contract signing on Monday, and that's something that I think a lot of people should be excited for. Mikko Matikka from the University of Denver has signed his entry-level contract at the Utah Hockey Club. Coming right out of a national championship run.
6'3", 201, so follows the blueprint. Big guy. 20 goal scorer in college, which is pretty good in 43 games, and especially in D1.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not a bad offensive output. So 33 points, 41 PIMs. You don't find a lot of high PIM guys in college. I don't know if fans know this or not, but in D1, you can't fight. You get ejected. So there's no fighting in D1. But yeah, national championship with Denver. I mean, that's fantastic. And you know what? 20 goals is 4th among college freshmen. So that's pretty darn good. And he was one of only 2 guys to score 20 for Denver. Also, pretty darn good when your team is national champion. So I think that that's a fantastic thing to get that ELC signed. And again, is he going to play for Denver next year? Is he going to play in Utah? I think unless he comes in and has an absolutely stellar camp. He was just a freshman.
Well, now that you signed his ELC, I don't think he can go back to Denver, if I'm not mistaken. Because now, unless the NCAA rules are now completely
You know what?
change.
Actually, that's an interesting point. And number one, I'd have to check the age to see if they could put him in the American Hockey League. But the other thing too is now you're right with the name, image, likeness rules that are in place. I wonder if that counts to make him a professional or not.
I do believe he can. I think if you're an NCAA, if you were from the NCAA and you can go to the AHL at any time, I think, if you sign a contract. Because I think it's 18 the minimum of a player who can play in the AHL, but it's 20 if you're coming from the Canadian Hockey League.
Because you have to be protected to go play in junior. Still, you would still have to go play junior hockey if you were assigned to a junior team. So that's interesting to me now with the NIL rules. I never thought of that. I wonder if it does make it different with the ELC or not. That's, you know what? If anybody knows who's listening, drop us a comment. Otherwise, Tom has homework now.
I will definitely take a look at it too, just to kind of confirm what I think. I'm pretty sure it doesn't apply in this scenario, but again, would definitely be worth taking a look at it. But just another addition to the future of this program, and I think is going to be continues to add to the excitement to this team, Tom, as Utah Hockey Club is really putting all the pieces together, and the roadmap is painted pretty darn clearly for the next couple of years.
Yep. And you know what? Fans in Tucson have a lot to be excited about as well, because that program, number one, they're staying in Tucson the entire season now, which is fantastic for the city. Yeah. And you and I both have very sympathetic ties to the city of Tucson.
Oh, yeah.
And I also love that in the American Hockey League, obviously Coachella Valley is a very, very good team. They've been absolutely ripping it up. Lost in the Calder Cup final to the Hershey Bears, but had a killer regular season, great playoff run. And that is probably the closest comparison for if you want to know where your prospects stand. And believe me, Tucson's going to see quite a bit of the Coachella Valley Firebirds. And I think that's going to be an excellent comparison for them.
It will certainly be a really fun look for that. I'm actually going to be excited for the upcoming American Hockey League season. I'm going to see how often I can make it down to Tucson, because it's as someone that lives in Mesa right now. Again, things can move around, but someone that lives in Mesa right now and part of the East Valley of the Phoenix metropolitan area, about a 2-hour drive to Tucson. It's 4 hours round trip. It's not easy.
I reverse commuted that for a while. I went from Tucson to the east side when I was covering Arizona State in their D1 transition. I was doing that for about a year and a half. And I was making the drive every Tuesday on Arizona State's media days. And I know every time I bring up Arizona State, you cringe. But I mean, it's like hockey is still alive and well in Phoenix. It's just not in the NHL right now. And I'm a firm believer that it will go back one day, and it'll probably be east side, north side, depending on how the city grows between now and then and what happens. But to me, looking at the Roadrunners' proximity, it's not bad to Salt Lake. It could be better, and I just kind of wonder what the future of that Roadrunners team. I don't want to get off on this tangent. This is a whole nother episode, but kind of wonder what the future of that Roadrunners team is going to be.
You mean the report that Morello is going to move them to Reno after they're done with their lease in 2026?
I'll be surprised if they wait that long.
Yeah,
they'll try to find a way out of the lease, but hey, you got this.
Yeah, that'll certainly be a conversation for another time. Yeah. But it certainly is something that's going to be worth talking about when we get closer to all that. Maybe when we have just in general, maybe some extra time as we do a lot of other speculation. Speaking of other kinds of things we're going to get to this week, though, Tom, tomorrow everyone's going to be listening to. We'll probably have a full schedule reaction. Take a look at what the entire schedule is going to look like, because that's the anticipation that it's going to be happening later today when everyone's listening to it. So we're going to find out, where Utah's going at certain parts of the year. If you guys want to plan your road trips, if that's what you're down for, we'll talk about that. And again, reminder that if you want to go to the scrimmage, it's going to be this Friday over at the that arena in Park City. If you don't know the name of it, it's slipped my mind right now. We're going to talk with crossovers, having hosts from the other shows come on our show and talk about the players that we acquired from their teams, right? That Utah Clubs acquired from those teams. So we're going to talk, Locked On Lightning, talk about Mikhail Sergachev, and maybe talk with Locked On Devils to talk about John Marino, talk with, Locked On Canucks to talk about the signing of Cole. So there's going to be certainly a lot to get to on all that. We have a full month ahead of you, so you will not want to go anywhere else to get your Utah hockey content.
Well, if you do go somewhere else, you're probably going to come back. So
yeah,
I'm just going to say that. But no, we're going to be all over it. Foot on the gas pedal all through the month of July. And you know what, Robyn? I mean, at the end of the month of July, we're going to have such a clear view of who and what this team is. We'll be able to take a look at some other teams heading into August. But man, honestly, I don't know that I've been this excited for the West being this strong since maybe back when I was with the Nashville Predators, because I remember there was a shift in the balance of power, and it happened right around 2009, 2010. The East had been the dominant conference for a while, and all of a sudden, the West would poke through here and there, but just all of a sudden, the balance of power shifted to the West. I think we're seeing that happen again, and it's happening this summer. And the West is going to be the conference to talk about. Of course, you talk about East Coast bias in the media all you want. It does exist. Maybe not as bad, I think, as some might think. However, there is a tendency to look at those teams more. But trust me, the better hockey is going to be played in the West this year and probably for the next 4 or 5 seasons.
Yes, sir. We certainly will see that. It will be fun to watch. It will be fun to watch and see exactly this competition happen. And once again, to hear all that competition and hear all the excitement, this is the place to tune into. That's Locked On Utah Hockey Club. If you did like what you hear today, guys.
Well, hang on. Before we leave, I have a question for you. What do you think about Utah? What do you give them for their day one grade? 2 signings, didn't spend a lot of money, didn't get Montour. What do you think? Where do you put them?
I think I can give him. Oh God, I try to think about that. B+, A-, kind of like ranging around there, because they got what they filled their needs. They filled what they needed. They didn't get the big splash, but they filled what they needed.
I'm going to go with a solid B+ for me. I don't know that getting a big fish would have pushed him to an A, because it would have been about the contract for me.
Fair.
But I agree, above average day in free agency. And actually, sometimes we've heard the phrase addition by subtraction. Sometimes you get better by what you don't add, by the options you leave yourself. And while that doesn't make itself clear to you right away, it will in the future. And so that's why I think another solid day here for Utah Hockey Club fans, and looking forward to seeing what happens next.
So what you're saying is Utah will leave the Warriors when Matthias Michelli, Logan Cooley, and Dylan Gunther and Josh Stone's contracts are up and they're ready to get signed decent contracts.
Boy, that's a lot, isn't it? It's a little terrifying.
Right? Then that's all within the next 2 to 3 years.
I know.
It's all within the next 2 to 3 years.
Come on, Cap. Keep going up.
Just keep going up to help this club. And they're in the perfect spot for it. They are indeed in the perfect spot for it. But that's going to be it for this episode of Locked On Utah Hockey Club. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We are available everywhere you get your shows, including on YouTube, SiriusXM, and ad-free on Amazon Music. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnNHL in Utah. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, all those at LO_NHL Utah. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano. Tom Callahan is at Callahan on air. Interact with us, ask the question you might have. We might answer right back in a future episode of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. I need to start getting used to that one now again, as we're moving towards that. Also, as a quick reminder to join our Insider Club, we get some exclusive content. We'll start posting some mailbags through there. So any of the major questions, burning questions you guys will have, send us a text once again to 801-760-9033 to get started. Use the promo code SUMMER50 on sign up. You get 50% off your first 2 months while hitting that off-season mode. So it's the perfect time to get to know your Utah Hockey Club. Once again, thanks everyone for listening to today's episode, and we'll see you guys next time.